Welcome to Tales with Ghost King, your podcast for the bizarre, the weird, and the spooky. Today we continue down Route 66 to the very haunted Lemp Mansion in St. Louis, Missouri. Lemp Mansion is said to be one of the most haunted places in the United States. It has been the home of billionaires, a rundown boarding house, and it was eventually converted into a bed and breakfast restaurant / diner theater. Back in 1838, the Lemp family came over from Eschwege, Germany. A man named Johann Adam Lemp built a small grocery store on Delmore and 6th Street. He sold general store items for households and his homemade beer. His recipe was a light golden beer that quickly grew in popularity at the time due to the fact that almost all beer was a darker. Using his father's handed-down recipe, the beer grew extremely popular. With a great demand for his product, he eventually opened a small brewery and gave up on the general store entirely. In 1840, near the Gateway Arch, he built his small brewery. He attached a pub next to his brewery, where he began to sell his beer. With the introduction to St. Louis's first lager, the demand had quickly grew. He knew his little establishment would not be able to keep up with the high demand. At the corner of Cherokee and D. Mendel Place, Lemp found a limestone cave that was just south of the city limits. He took ice that was chopped from the mighty Mississippi River and he placed it in the cave. This allowed the perfect environment for his brew to be stored. This new facility was one of the biggest in the city by the 1850s. In 1858, at the St. Louis Fair, his beer was awarded first prize. On August 15th, Adam Lemp passed away, a millionaire, leaving behind his son William, who would expand the brewery significantly. Above the caves, William purchased a 5-block facility. The new plant was completed in 1864 at Cherokee Street and Carondelet Avenue. The Lemp family was considered a symbol of power and wealth by the 1870s. They managed to control the market in St. Louis until the Prohibition began. William's father-in-law, Jacob Feckhart, built a house by the brewery in 1868. He purchased a house from him in 1876, and he used it as an office space and a residence. He quickly transformed a 33-room by expanding it into a Victorian. The brewery could be accessed by a tunnel that was built from the house's basement. With the invention of refrigeration, the cave was repurposed into a theater and an auditorium. Later on, a spiral staircase from Cherokee Street led down to a newly converted concrete swimming pool in which the heat pipes from the brewery and bowling alley turned it into an oasis. The Lemp Brewery introduced the Falstaff beer by the 1890s, which another company still brews to this day. They were the first established brewery who shipped their products from coast to coast. William, expanding his empire, helped today's major brands get started. He helped Pabst, Anheuser, and Busch get their companies going. What seems to be a common thing among many successful families during this time is tragedy struck the family. Beginning with his favorite son, Frederick, who was only 28 years old when he passed away from heart failure in 1901. After the passing of Frederick, William was rarely seen in public and began his slow withdrawal from society. Just 3 years later, William's close friend, Frederick Pabst, passed away, leaving William in a state that caused him to be nervous and unsettling. Even though he continued to arrive at his office every day, his mental health as well as his physical state began to deteriorate at a rapid pace. William committed suicide on February 13, 1904, with a .38 Smith & Wesson. His son William Jr. took control of the family's vast wealth and the family's brewery. Him and his wife quickly filled the house with servants and maids. They would spend large amounts of money on clothing, carriages, and art. The couple had been married in 1899. His wife, Lillian, was said to be a beautiful woman who came from a wealthy family. On September 26 of 1900, their son William J. Lemp III was born. They called Lillian the Lavender Lady because of her extreme love for the color. She would wear lavender attire and accessories, and even went as far as having the horses' harnesses from the carriage dyed this color. Although William would love to show off his wife, he was a child born into wealth. He was considered to be a player and did what he wanted or who he wanted. William, becoming bored of his trophy wife, would force her to spend all of her time shopping. He would give her $1,000 a day that she had to spend, or he told her she would receive nothing more. He, on the other hand, would run the brewery during the day while living a party-style life during the nights. The caves beneath the mansion would host lavish parties, with the main event being that of many prostitutes that he would hire. They would enjoy all the activities, such as the pool, the bowling alley, and also the free beer that was endless. His excessive activities finally caught up with him when a woman who wasn't his wife had his child. According to rumors, this child was a boy and was supposedly hidden in the attic of the house for his entire life. Though there is no paper record of the boy historically, and it's just rumors, Joe Gibbons, a St. Louis historian, interviewed a former nanny and a chauffeur who worked in the mansion in the past. They said there was a boy who had stayed in the attic, which was also where the servants' rooms were. It was said that the boy had been born with Down syndrome, that William had affairs with either prostitutes or the mansion's servant staff. He was also called Monkey Face Boy, being kept in the attic because he shamed the family. Although some say he has never left the Lemp mansion, and his presence is still there to this day. In 1908, William finally divorced his trophy wife. It quickly became front-page news with the family scandal. Court proceedings surrounding the divorce generated headlines claiming the messy affairs that had occurred throughout the marriage. 1909, February, the courthouse was crowded, with all who came to witness the tales of violence, the drinking, the atheism, and the cruelty that had occurred during their marriage. They seemed to ignore all these claims towards William when Lillian was photographed smoking a cigarette. She had almost lost custody of William Lemp III, but in the end she retained custody of him while she took the time to retire from the public's eye. On the final day of the divorce court, she was seen wearing entirely all black, far from her usual lavender attire that was a staple to her name and character. After the divorce, William's problems really began when 9 breweries came together, forming the Independent Brewing Company in 1906. Then, on April 16th, Will's mother passed away from cancer. This created a competition for William unlike any his family had ever seen in the past. The family fortune began to decline, but they still had renovations done to their mansion in 1911, which converted it into offices for the brewery. Failing to keep up with the times, the equipment began to decline, and by World War I, the brewery was barely getting by. Along the Merrimack River, Will had built himself a country house that he could retreat to. Then, in 1915, Ellie Lindbergh became Will's second wife. She was the widowed daughter of another brewer named Caspar Kohler. In 1919, the prohibition was instated by Congress. Although the family and its members were already wealthy, Will held on to hope that Congress would repeal the prohibition. He finally gave up, closing without notice. The workers showing up to work only found locked gates and locked doors. Joseph Grazendick purchased the Falstaff logo from Will for the price of $25,000. The International Shoe Company then purchased the brewery buildings for $588,000, even though prior to the prohibition, they were considered to be upwards of $7 million was their value. Will, like his father, slipped into a dark depression, being in ill health, having that same erratic nervous behavior, and hiding from the public. William shot himself in the heart with a .38 in the very same building his father died 18 years prior on December 29, 1922. William Lemp III then died of a heart attack in 1943. He was 42 years old. Charles, William II's brother, remodeled the mansion while he lived there with 2 servants and the illegitimate monkey boy child. As Charles grew older, he developed a fear for germs and he had OCD behavior. During this time, Monkey Boy passed away. He was in his 30s and was buried at the Lemp Cemetery plot with only the name Lemp on his grave. Shortly after, Charles committed suicide, becoming the 4th member of the family to do so, but not before he had shot his Doberman in the basement of the mansion. He then climbed the stairs and shot himself with a .38. He was not discovered until May 10, 1949. He was found by one of his staff, and the dog was found halfway up the steps from the basement. The Lemp family died out in 1970 with Edwin Lemp, who long avoided the family. He had burned all the paintings, documents, and artifacts related to the Lemp family. The mansion, though, was sold after Charles had passed away. It became a boarding house that had been run down, as was the neighborhood that surrounded it. Residents who lived there at the time reported many occurrences, such as hearing ghostly knocks and phantom footsteps through the mansion. These stories spread, and it became difficult for the boarding house to get any tenants, and it further declined. But in 1975, Dick Porter and his family purchased the mansion and began renovations, immediately turning it into a restaurant. However, workers quickly began to report apparitions and strange sounds. Their tools would vanish, never to be found, and they would feel a dread of being watched. After renovations were completed, the restaurant had opened, with many staff members reporting very strange experiences. Apparitions would appear, but vanish. Voices and sounds could be heard from coming out of nowhere. Glasses would lift from the bar, flying through the air. Doors would lock and unlock. Lights would come on and go back off. The bar would have a piano that played on its own, without anyone around. Multiple members of the Lemp family are said to haunt the mansion, with most of the activity being in the stairways, the attic, and what the staff nicknamed the Gates of Hell. The area of the basement that used to access the old caves that ran to the brewery. In the attic, it is believed that Monkey Face Boy haunts this space. As the boy had Down syndrome, he spent his entire life in the attic of the mansion. Witnesses often report strange occurrences on the 3rd floor of the mansion. Some even say that the boy's face is seen regularly from the street and he peeks through the small windows as people are near or walking by the mansion. Ghost investigators had left toys in his room, drawing a circle around them to see if they moved any. They returned the next day to find that all the toys were in a new location. In the downstairs women's bathroom, women have reported a man who peeks over the stalls. This was Will Jr.'s bathroom, which once had the first shower in the city. Angry, the women rushed to the bar, accusing 2 men. She said, "I hope you got an eyeful," but the men denied that they had left the bar, and the bartender had confirmed this as well. In Will Sr.'s room, someone can be heard running up the steps and kicking at the door. When he had ended his life, Will Jr. was said to have ran up the steps and kicked at his door to get to his father. Outside of Will Sr.'s office, a tour guide reported hearing horses. This area is now a parking lot, but was once where they had kept their horses. The Lemp family mansion attracts many ghost hunters from around the country. It has been featured in many magazines and news articles. Today you can visit the mansion as it is a bed and breakfast with rooms that have been restored to its time. You can also enjoy the Mystery Diner Theater or its fine dining restaurant. But one thing is clear, the mansion remains haunted and spooky for many who visit. Next week we will explore some more myths and legends, taking a short break from the Route 66 Ghost Tour. Check back every Thursday at 7 p.m. for new episodes of Tales with Ghost King. Don't forget to hit that follow button and share with your friends. Thanks for listening.